Who here has an invoice out that they're having trouble getting paid? Raise your hand. Right there in the back. I got one. You got a lawyer? I can't hear you. You got a lawyer? No. You will by the end of the day. Who here has ever had trouble negotiating a contract with somebody and felt like they got screwed at the end of it? Yeah, I got more hands on that one. You guys got lawyers? Some of you do. That's good. The other ones will by the end of the day. Awesome. Here we go. Welcome to My Lawyer Gabe. My name is Mike Monteiro, and I am with Mule Design. We are a small design shop here in San Francisco. And to get us back to when we first met Gabe, it was about 10 years ago. We were working with a client whose name I have long ago forgotten. But we had what we thought was a pretty decent contract, and I think we were doing all right. But we got into some issues with them, and they actually violated a term of the contract, and they called, and they told us that they were suing us because we decided they violated the terms of the contract. We weren't going to work with them anymore, so they were going to sue us. Anybody here ever gotten sued? Yeah, there you go. Okay. It sucks. It feels like shit. And if you've never gotten sued before, which I hadn't to that point, having somebody call you up and say, I'm going to sue you, you immediately start thinking of like HBO's Oz and where you're going to end up. And it doesn't feel good, and it's scary, and it sucks. So we were like running around all freaked out. What are we going to do? And we ended up calling a friend of ours who was the legal counsel at the last company that we had worked at together for advice, and she introduced us to this up-and-coming lawyer, the son of her partner, and his name was Gabe. And meeting Gabe has really changed who we are. It has changed what we do, and it's changed how we approach work, because now we feel confident about what we're going to do. We feel confident about what we're talking to people about. When we get like a ridiculous contract in the mail, we immediately send it to him. When somebody starts arguing with us about terms, we give him a call, and just knowing that he's there makes us feel like we can take a stance on this stuff that's better, that takes better care of us. And I will never forget when I first talked to Gabe and explained this problem. This was our first phone call. I don't know if you remember this, but I described to you what was going on, and you just said, I got this. And that felt so good. And the question that we get most about lawyers is, at what point can I afford to get a lawyer? And the answer is right now, because you can't afford not to have a lawyer. I make more money by having Gabe with me and making sure that our contracts are tight, making sure that we're getting the best terms on stuff that we can get, just making sure that we're in the right and knowing that he's with us. I call him my little profit center. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a little Q&A. I want to introduce the legend, Gabe Levine, over here. Let's have a big round of applause. How you doing, Gabe?
I'm good, thank you. I think I have to turn the mic on.
No, it's on.
No?
Okay. So we're going to do a little bit of Q&A. We are going to ask you to send your questions in with the hashtag LawyerBod. You started doing CrossFit, right?
Yeah, CrossFit.
You look good.
Thank you.
All right. So send us your questions with the hashtag LawyerBod. Our friend Chuck Pearson, Dr. Chuck from Adobe. Let's have a big hand for Dr. Chuck. So Dr. Chuck over here will be going through the questions as they come in and relaying them back to us, and we're going to answer them as best as we can. All right?
Sounds good.
You ready to do this? All right.
Tweet some questions.
How you doing, Chuck?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
Oh, by the way,
welcome.
before we start this, where's hey Steph, where are we with cut Seth's hair? $1,850. We need more money to cut Seth's hair.
What was that hashtag again?
Hashtag cut Seth's hair. How you doing, Seth? Okay.
I think Seth has anxiety.
All right. So I was doing that to buy you a little time, Chuck.
Thank you. Okay, here's a question.
No.
Let me get it together here. All right, this is a good one. What sort of boilerplate language should be included on contracts to deal with the use of open source software?
Mike?
That's all you.
Oh, all right.
I got nothing for that.
You know, so how short can I be in answering these questions? That's a tough task for a lawyer. Most contracts I see, which are either with relatively large companies or funded startups, have a lot of language that doesn't reflect reality, such as everything I'm going to deliver you is original, right? No, it's not. We've talked a lot today about how we're using third-party tools that make this stuff a lot faster and easier. And guess what? We all have code libraries that we use as well of our own. So what I prefer to do is list out the types of things that you're going to be delivering in a legal way and the rights that are associated with those, and be very plain that, look, some of these things are open source tools, and that's why you're not paying $1 million, you're paying $100,000, or you're not paying $50,000, you're paying $10,000 for what it is that you've hired me to create. So it can be a tough conversation, particularly with startups, which some of you know need to own everything, at least in their contracts, in order to get their funding. But list out the licenses. So that's sort of the easiest way to cut through the bullshit. They want to know what's going in there. You can't tell them at the outset. You can only tell them at the end because you have no idea. You haven't even done discovery. So say, hey, we can use anything that's MIT. We can use anything that's BSD, and we can use anything that's Apache. And if it's going to be GPL, we'll tell you first, and we'll get your permission or something like that. That's the easiest way to cut through that, I've found, and work in the reality that you guys have to deal with.
Great.
I have nothing to add.
All right, here's a great one. How do I decide on the right corporate structure for a small app studio? LLC, S Corp, C Corp, something else?
Yeah, that's a tough one because well, look, my preference is for corporations because they've been around.
Because they're people.
They are. They're people, and they have
And
First
you're-
Amendment rights.
And you're a people person.
Yeah, people person. They can pay money to Republicans. So I think LLCs can do that too. They've been around for a while. I told this to Mike and Erica when they first came in, but more clearly defined way to keep the corporate veil in place. And there's only a few things that make them slightly more difficult than LLCs. I think it's important to look at why you're doing it. So there's two reasons, right? You might get some tax advantages, and that's something that you need to talk to a good CPA about. And that's as important, if not more so, than a lawyer having a good CPA if you've got a fledgling business. Or even a business that's more than fledgling. And the other reason is liability protection. So go with the better option, which is a corp, in my view. The LLC does provide some flexibility, but you can largely have it with the corporation.
I think we were an LLC when we started, and then at some point, and it was after meeting you, we changed to an S Corp.
Yeah, you were something. It was maybe an LLC or
We
maybe
were
just
fucked is what we were.
maybe just nothing.
Yeah. No, we were an LLC.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh, memory.
Give us a little credit.
Credit.
Okay. A lot of great questions coming in. Remember, they said you could ask anything, anything.
Chuck.
Yeah.
And
There's a
I
good
get
one.
to choose what they get to answer. Should there be a policy for employees when listing company work in their own personal portfolio?
What do you think on this one?
I don't care, honestly. I mean, when we do work in the studio, like everybody touches it to such an extent, and everybody has such a part in in what we end up doing that there's no way that any one person can say, hey, this is work that I did. So the way I see it, if you were with the company when that work was being done, put it in your portfolio because you did something on it. And I mean, when I interview people, like when I'm giving them jobs, like the portfolio is just a very small piece of actually deciding whether to hire them or not. If I see something in there that's interesting, I'm going to start asking them questions about it. Questions about like how, why was this decided? Why did this go that way? What made you, what were the goals that you were trying to achieve with this? And if they know what they're talking about, they'll be able to answer those questions.
How to get a job with Mule Design. So I don't have a problem with it from the business standpoint. The situation I've seen is, and this was a real situation, a client was subcontracting for a traditional agency, and the client was not allowed to show the work on a very big automotive manufacturer's campaign, which it had done over $1 million worth of work on in the past like 14 months or something. It was a major, major client for them. And there was a bad breakup with an employee, and he left and he started showing all the work. And so in that scenario, we had to rely on, fortunately for them, they had in place a strong contract with that employee, and we were able to rely on it. And that employee hired a reasonable attorney who understood the predicament and the problems that could be caused, and it solved itself because he took it down. But it could be a dangerous situation if you're not allowed to display that work. So somebody should, at the very least, be required to ask your permission to make sure that this is something that can be shown.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, because we had a situation a while back where a designer he thought secretly looking for another job. By the way, it's totally obvious when you're looking for another job. When you start lining up dentist appointments, I know you're looking for another job. But this guy thought he was secretly looking for another job, and he started updating his portfolio, which is another tell. And he put things in the portfolio that we were still working on, work that was in progress, so that I ended up giving him a lot of time to look for another job shortly after finding that.
I imagine. Said bye-bye?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a bunch of questions coming in that are kind of trying to get at, let's say you're in a project, the relationship with the client goes bad, the project's starting to go south. There's questions that are coming at it from different angles, but at what point do you tend to call Gabe, and at what point does it turn into an issue that you need Gabe to help with?
Well, I call Gabe at various points, and calling Gabe is not necessarily pulling the trigger on something. Like sometimes I just call Gabe to get advice. That's not a sign that the project has gone sour.
So this is it's one of the tougher issues, because every week practically I get a call from a client where client services is hard. Whether you're a lawyer, designer, developer, it doesn't matter. There's personality issues you have to deal with. And that dance is when, assuming the contract is relatively fair, I'd say that dance is 65% psychological, 35% legal. You have to just try to manipulate the party on the other side to the result you want, which is often get me the hell out of this project. So whether that's cutting them a break financially or giving them the red herring option of something else to get out. But to the extent that question is how do we deal with this client and get out of it? It can be your lawyer/shrink is a good one for dealing with those situations.
That said, make sure you have an actual shrink. I don't want, as much as I like you, I don't want to put you in front of clients unless it's the very last resource, unless I've exhausted everything else. And this, first I have to make sure that I'm picking the right kind of clients to work with. People you shouldn't be working with kind of announce themselves very early on in the process. And You don't have to work with those people. If you're getting a hint during the while you're in the, God, what do you call it?
Negotiation stage.
Negotiation. While you're negotiating or pitching a project and you're getting a hint that this might be bad news, it's a better idea to walk away then than to move forward, because then you're going to end up likely in a scenario where you end up having to call Gabe and things go sour.
Yeah, and Mike's particularly good at ending relationships. No, I'm just kidding.
Dick.
Okay, here's one. So here's somebody who works at a small contracting agency that has a huge client. They're stating that they get paid randomly, and they're wondering sort of how beholden are they to the company's agreement with the client.
Well, unless so not at all. It's all a matter of the contract between the agency or company and that contractor or freelancer. Now, if you're, as many of my clients are, in the middle, and you're the agency or the design and development company, and you're hiring freelancers, that can be a precarious position, because not only do you owe the duties to your client, but you owe duties to the freelancer/contractor as well. So you have to make sure that what we like to call flow down provisions line up in terms of rights and confidentiality, just like it is with employees. You want to make sure that subcontractor freelancer is bound to all the terms that you're bound to. But from the contractor standpoint, it's all about your contract, the contractor's contract with the agency, not the end client.
But the subcontractors, if I'm hearing this correctly, are never the client's problem.
Legally?
Yeah.
Never the client's problem. Well, I mean, they can do something that cause a client problem, but the client's not going to look to the sub. Most likely, it's going to look to the agency that it's in
Right.
contract.
The client has a contract and a relationship with the agency
Right.
that they hired.
Right.
And then that agency went out and established other relationships with other people.
Right. The law is really pretty clear about it. The difference between an employee and a contractor in that scenario, they're separate. And yeah, that's absolutely right.
Okay. So here's a good one. So how do I interview a lawyer? What should I ask a lawyer when trying to decide whether to hire them?
That's a good question. I mean, I think experience in the area that you are working in is important. So ask them about that. Ask them about their rates and their fee structure. Obviously, how do you bill? Don't be shy about that either. Ask them. I mean, this is rare. But asking for referrals is okay, like other clients that they work for. And I think just like anything else, you just want to talk to the person and get a sense, just like the client interview and the negotiations, just talk to the person and get a sense of whether there's somebody you want to work with or not. If you don't, there's a shit pile of lawyers, particularly in California. So.
Yeah, I mean, a relationship with a lawyer is like a relationship with anybody else. You need to be able to have, conversations about stuff, and you need to make sure that it's not somebody who looks down on you for not there's nothing worse than a designer who looks down at you for not being a designer, and we've all seen those people. So having a lawyer who looks down at you and who won't explain things to you in terms that you understand. I don't have a law degree, so I can't talk to you the same way that you would talk to another lawyer. You have your own shorthand, the same
Right.
way that two designers would have their own shorthand in talking to each other. So when you talk to me, I imagine that you're using the language that you would use to talk to a client, to somebody who doesn't have a law degree.
Yeah.
And you explain these things in ways that I understand.
I try, yeah.
Some of them are more explainable than others.
Right. I should do a book like Mike, which is how to work with your lawyer. Because so many people, for me, I'm fortunate enough that I can kind of bounce these folks, but is this contract okay to sign? I don't know. Tell me about what it's about. Tell me, and then have that discussion. So the how to use your lawyer thing is really important. Talk to each other in a way that you understand each other. And your businesses and the things that you do are complex. I was just sitting there thinking, I come to these conferences, and after I watch a couple presentations, I'm like, God damn it, I don't know anything. Everything's changed in your industry again. So yeah, it's helpful to also educate your lawyer about what these things mean. Don't assume he or she knows about the complexities of your projects, which are complex.
So here's a question for Mike then. So related to that, How did you negotiate your contract with Gabe?
I was so cheap back then.
You were ridiculously cheap. I don't remember too much about it though. I mean, I just honestly, and this is terrible advice, and don't follow it, but I just got a good feeling off the guy.
Yeah. I mean,
And also, I was in a situation where I was freaking out, and like I said, somebody was threatening to sue me, and here's somebody telling me that he can take care of it, and that was kind of all I needed. It's horrible advice. Don't do that. Make sure that you've got a lawyer in your back pocket before you need them.
one thing about how to interview a lawyer, I should go back like a step before that, is how you get to that lawyer. I think a personal referral from somebody that you know or trust is super helpful to their lawyer.
Okay. Here's a question. Is there a good checklist of words you don't want to find in a contract for a one-off project?
Guarantee.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always warranties and representations. I mean, whether it's a one-off contract or not, there's some buzzwords. Some of you will probably know, but the stuff that can really get you in trouble from a liability standpoint tends to center on guarantees, warranties about the functionality of the software and about it not infringing on any third-party patents, which you have no fucking clue about. And so those are really two things, indemnity and warranty around those particular pieces. And then from a payment standpoint, always kind of look at the trigger for the payment. So if there are things like satisfaction, acceptance, things like that, those are words to pay attention to what they do, because if your client's acceptance and satisfaction are preconditions to your payment, they're preconditions to your payment. So that can be problematic.
Yeah, and we make sure that all the trigger words around payments are around things that we have control over. Like, payment is never due upon launch, unless it's something that we're launching, which is rare these days. Payment is due when we deliver things to you.
Yeah.
It's not due when you feel a certain way. And actually, we stay away from guaranteeing dates in those contracts too, because while I'm pretty sure that I can get work done in a certain amount of time, we have to deal with client feedback and messes.
Content taking forever.
Yeah, messes that happen on the client side that we have no control over.
Yeah, that comes up a ton for me these days too, is just the drag on the project from multiple rounds of feedback and delay and too many cooks in the kitchen on the client side. And as I've heard it referred to, the swoop and poop by some big shot at the end when like, okay, we're ready to go. Now that sucks, I don't like it, do it all over again.
Yeah, and we refer to dates, whenever we're talking to clients and in contracts as X amount of time after X happens.
Right.
So we can deliver this 21 days after you've delivered,
right,
like all of the content for the site, for example.
The Gantt chart.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can't promise something by July 30th and have you deliver things by the stuff that we need by July 28th.
Yeah, and I love that approach. That's a good one. Your work is contingent on theirs.
Okay. Here's one. I did a project for an ex-boyfriend who asked me to sign an NDA.
No.
No.
You don't really even need to finish that. And you can replace ex-boyfriend with friend, relative, anyone that I knew in childhood, anyone I'm friends with on Facebook, and the answer will be the same: no.
Moving on to the next question, related.
No.
Yes. Here we go. We sign a lot of NDAs in order just to start the conversation for a project. Should we send that always to a lawyer first?
Yes. Yeah. I don't often say that, but here's the thing. The NDAs can be kind of grabby of intellectual property rights, and that really bugs me. And it's an easy fix. They should also be mutual. There's no reason they shouldn't be mutual. If you don't get paid for your work, but you do a lot of work before the contract is signed and you've done stuff that they can now go and use, which most NDAs that are unilateral are going to give them the right to do, that's kind of shitty. So I'm a big fan. There's some other reasons too, but I'm a big fan, and it takes me a quarter hour to review one of those, or any lawyer that knows what he's doing with it.
NDAs are stupid.
Mic's off. NDAs are kind of stupid.
NDAs are stupid.
Yeah, I mean, they are.
Honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
It's always like people who are like, I'm part of a 3-person startup and I have $10 and I need you to sign my 15-page NDA.
Yeah, it's, all of this, I don't want to go too far off the map, but all of this is kind of bottom-upping from the investors with the money that are then investing in a fund that then has a manager with fiduciary duties that invests in a startup. There's other factors with big companies, but they have to get it papered at every level. And if you don't have your non-disclosure agreements,
it feels like one of those things that people do to make themselves feel real, to make themselves feel important. Like, I have my NDA. Like, I'll sign an NDA, but it's not going to change anything that I do, because I'm in the business. I've got so many secrets about so many companies right now because that's the nature of our work. And if I tell any of them, I'm screwed. My reputation goes down the drain. Nobody's ever going to work with me again. Nobody's ever going to trust me again. And that's more important than any NDA I'm ever going to sign.
You should just tell people
They're
that.
dumb. I do tell them that.
Yeah.
I'm signing this, but you're being a big baby by handing it to me.
I don't recommend that approach. Maybe if you're. No, I will say this in a small counterpoint. There is an area of the law called trade secrets. If you don't get people to sign NDAs, your secret sauce is no longer a secret sauce. So there's a reason for it. They're annoying and they're silly. Yeah, send them to the lawyer.
I mean, somebody who shows up with an NDA is like a middle-aged balding dude with a ponytail and a red Corvette. Maybe Tesla's a better example now.
I don't know where to go with that.
Yeah, just leave it. What else you got, Chuck? NDAs are
So
stupid.
much. I got so much here. Is there any recourse or steps to take when a former employee is speaking about internal procedures, client info, or generally just talking shit?
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but again, this is where you hope you have a pretty good written agreement with that employee. They're typically called something like an employee confidentiality and invention assignment agreement or something like that. So you have the contract to rely on, and so you're breaching these confidentiality provisions, and the intellectual property rights in here if they're using stuff they shouldn't be using. And then outside of the contract, there's also defamation law, which is a rabbit hole, but talking shit might fall into that category if it's actually false, like they're saying something that's actually false as opposed to just opinion. Then you get the cease and desist letter from the attorney out to that employee. Although I used to do a ton of employment law, like nothing but it, and if you've got a really ticked off ex-employee out there, you can fire them up by engaging, particularly on social media. So I've seen some things just flame out by just ignoring it too.
Yeah, I can't control what other people say about me, so I try not to worry about it too much.
That's good.
The best way to handle an angry ex-employee is not to do anything terrible to them when they're still an employee. And, then again, you can't control how other people feel about stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, I've had employees complain about things, and I just let them wind down.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into a war of who's right and who's wrong. I mean, we have a certain reputation at this point, and I think it's solid enough that it can take like a couple of dings from an angry employee. An angry employee is always going to be, or an angry ex-employee is always going to be an angry ex-employee.
Yeah.
All right. Here's another one. Are there things that an agency needs to be mindful of when scaling, i.e. things that don't apply to a team of 5, but do to a team of 15 or 50, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure from an operational standpoint, tons, I imagine. A lot of my clients have gone like this and really prefer to be here, just from an operational standpoint. They're, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, no, 25, 20, 15, 10, comfy.
Isn't there magical shit that happens at 15?
I don't know. I've heard that from
You
various...
told me that.
Maybe somebody convinced me of that at some point. I think Kelly did. I don't know. It's probably Kelly.
You said don't go over 15.
Was
You'll
I
get in a
right?
lot of trouble.
Was I right?
Yeah, you were right, but not for the reasons that you're talking
There's
about.
magical shit that happens at 5, which is that, and that includes the owners if you're like a corp taking a salary. 5 W-2s, and you're thrown in California into FEHA land, Fair Employment and Housing Act. And then there's other magical numbers if you're in San Francisco with respect to contributions to, and I think Oakland now as well, with respect to contributions to employee benefits and that sort of thing. So yeah, at every point of the way there's triggers, and if you have a good, like a Zen payroll or something, hopefully they're watching out for you on that, or an HR type consultant. But yeah, there are various laws that kick in at stages as you get bigger about employee benefits and laws that apply around disability accommodation and the like.
I'll do a little sponsorship thing here. We just switched to Zenefits at Mule. And is Lauren here? Lauren, stand up. Lauren works at Zenefits, and they've actually been taking really good care of us. They take care of all that crap that you don't want to do, and they're very good at it and very kind and helpful.
That's what I meant, Zenefits.
Yeah, talk to her.
Okay. I think this
Not
question is for Gabe, but you know, we can ask Mike also. What is the most interesting or unexpected part of your work?
Huh. Those are always the hard questions. Interesting or unexpected? You know, when somebody just loses it on the other side or is a complete dick, I'm always floored. Like, it's just business. But a little war story, I suppose. I'm on the phone with one of my calmest, nicest clients, and we're talking to, doing a project for a bunch of real estate developers. You know, no offense to anybody in the room, but they tend to not necessarily be the most awesomest clients. A lot of money involved. They need to satisfy a lot of people. And this guy's on the phone swearing, just, you know, there's no point in it, right? And we keep trying to bring him back to things. And at some point he's just like, this is just me. I'm a dick. You got to deal with it. And this is like, you know, a $350,000 project where my client has 3 different subs and tons of liability. And we got off the phone and I was like, don't do it. just don't do it. Ultimately, he's doing it. We got a very good contract, but that surprises the shit out of me, and I find it incredibly interesting. The psychological part of my job is fascinating.
Yeah, if somebody's telling you that they're a dick and that you just have to deal with it, they're lying
There's
to you.
better clients.
You do not have to deal with that. There was a little bit of a dust up last week on about some article that was published in Science. Some advice column. You know what I'm talking about, Chuck?
The scientist who talk
the
about the gender kerfuffle, or
Yeah, so somebody wrote in a question and said, like, my supervisor like leers at me and looks down my shirt every chance they get. And the reply, and this was from somebody who's been in the industry for a very long time and has probably had a really rough time getting to where she is now, which is, you know, to be considered, said you just have to put up with it sometimes, which is a really fucked up thing to say to somebody who came to you for help.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Apparently this woman, she's a scientist, she's an older one, she's actually married to a Nobel Prize winner, basically said, men are gonna be men, look down your shirt, you just have to deal with it and move on, kind of thing.
I used to do anti-harassment training for large groups of employees and then managerial employers. I guess you actually don't have to deal with that, believe it or not. The law.
Hey,
obviously you don't have to
who's
deal
currently tweeting there are 3 white guys on stage talking about women's issues? Because they would be correct.
It would be better if we were something other than white. No, I'm just kidding. You don't get it.
Just move
We could
on.
talk about lawyer bods.
Lawyer bot.
Do client-contractor breakups usually favor one or the other, the client or the contractor?
No, if everybody's reasonable, it's okay. It happens, it's done, people move on, nobody's entirely satisfied. That's a good result when nobody's entirely satisfied.
That's my parents' marriage, by the way.
There are certain things that you can do, one of which is possessing as much of the money from the project as possible to make it go better for you. get paid early and often.
Tell people about kill fees. I love kill fees.
Mike, yeah, kill fees. You know, so the billing models have changed a lot, but back when things were almost always acceptance and milestone based, and you had, say, 2 big milestones, 50,000 up front, 50,000 at the end, a lot of the contracts I would see when I first got into serving your industry like 10 years ago were completely silent on what happened if the client terminated, and they had a right to. Midway through the project, it's like, well, do we get paid anything more? Because we're counting on that to make payroll. So the kill fee says, look, if you're going to terminate this agreement, obviously not for us completely breaching it, but just
For reasons that are beyond, for reasons that are not the result of the design studio fucking up.
right, exactly.
Hey, can I curse, Jesse? Okay.
Oh shit! I already cursed a lot. Then you get paid something. Specify what it is. Negotiate it up front because it's your opportunity cost. You know, you're dedicating a team or yourself to that project and figure out negotiate what that point is where the client's willing to give you X if it terminates at this point, and it can be a multiple of a portion of it or a half of the remainder. I think is fairly typical as well. Something to get paid if they kill the project.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not sure how much time we have. I think we're close, but if I have an existing client and form an LLC, to what extent will the LLC benefits extend to that client?
Contracts are either assignable or they're not. And so if the contract's assignable, you can assign it to your LLC. If it's not, you would need your client's consent, which hopefully they wouldn't withhold. But once you form that LLC, you should assign it. And if it's assignable, you still have to notify your client that it's been assigned to the LLC.
Okay. And Gabe, are you taking on clients?
Yes, but yes, I am. Busy these days. I don't know about you guys, for 2015 has been a hell of a year. Hell of a year for all of us, but yes, I am.
Okay. What about pro bono work?
Do I do it?
No.
No.
'Cause I have a question.
Should they do it?
Well, if one is doing it, I don't know what you do, Mike. Do you form a contract? Or is it
I don't work for free.
Okay.
This is how I earn my living, man. I will, this is a thing that generates the most amount of fighting on Twitter is when I talk about designers working for free. It's kind of insane. I will work at a reduced rate for the right types of clients. And by the way, a venture-funded startup is not the type of client that deserves a reduced rate, so stop asking for it. But if it's like a civic organization, like here in town that I really want to work with, like the San Francisco Tenants Union that was mentioned earlier, who would very much benefit from you donating to cut Seth's hair. Like somebody like them, we would work at a reduced rate. But the trick there is I always we do the contract as usual, and the contract always stipulates the actual what I would have charged them, and then there's like a line through it marking the discount, and then what I'm actually going to charge them, because I want them to understand the value of what they're getting. And that's for both of our benefits, because then they understand the value of the time. And when you're doing free work for somebody, one of the downsides of that is you don't value something that you're getting for free. So the free thing that you're getting, if you've got like 10 things to do today, and one of them is to get feedback to the people who are doing your free website, that's going to go to the bottom of your list. So the work that you're doing for free is as important to you as it is to your client, which is not a lot. And it ends up that those things drag on. And in the meantime, you're going to get paying work that needs your attention. And it's just, it turns into like a clusterfuck for both parties. And this thing that you started doing as like a very noble endeavor ends up, not being a very nice thing.
I'll say one thing about this, which is, when you use open source software, there's a big disclaimer. It's really the only part of the license, right? Do whatever the blank you want with it, and we're not liable for anything. If you're going to do free work for someone, that should be your contract. Yes, I will do this for you. Here's my disclaimer. Use it for whatever you want, but I'm not promising you anything about this. That's from a legal standpoint what I think about, the free. I don't have a problem with it, but just make sure you're protected.
Okay, great. Okay, here's a question about copyright. So who owns the copyright to my artwork at the end of a project? Who should own the copyright to my artwork?
Should, I don't know, but who does depends on the contract. And it also depends on the type of work that you're doing, like what the artwork is for and what you bargain for up front. That should be made plain. Like, is this a exclusive license, a non-exclusive license, like I could use it for someone else? Or are you buying it out and I can't use it for anything and nobody else can use it for anything? But the contract needs to specify it. You see work made for hire all the time, and that means whether there's payment or not. When you put pen to paper, and you say, here, this is the thing I drew for you, your client owns it. So watch out for that work for hire, work made for hire language.
You mean watch out for it?
Just, a lot of people toss it around. They say, I have a lot of clients who are like, yeah, it's a work for hire contract. Like, no, it's not. Because you're using pre-existing code, or you're using stock photography, you're using things that you've already created. Your client can't own it all. So be very careful about the use of that word, and then watch out in the contract for the actual terms too, or even in the negotiation stage when somebody's coming to you to talk about it.
Okay. If you two guys wrote a book together, what would you title it?
My lawyer, Gabe.
Oh, shit.
That's also good.
Because Mike tells me, he's like, sometimes with fuck you, pay me, and this, he's like, no, I'm changing it up. We're going to do this. Okay, you're the boss. You're the man who knows how to entertain people, so I will do what you say. But yeah.
I got a question for you. What's the most pervasive dumb thing you've seen designers do, like as a craft?
Yeah, okay, I got this.
Okay.
Not just designers, but you keep marching despite the fact that you've got approved designs, or you're way past your rounds of revision, and you don't say anything. And then come to me, a month or two later saying, yeah, we did all this free work, but the contract said we were only going to do like 2 rounds, and now we're mired in this. You have to stop and say something, or you don't get to make a change order. It's uncomfortable. You don't want to do it, but you can't be afraid of speaking up and making the change order. You're going to lose money on that project. That's the stupidest thing I've seen people do repeatedly.
I think there's a huge category of mistakes designers make that can be labeled like, this thing happened 20 miles down the road. Can you fix it?
Yeah. And I understand. You never want to be like, I think this is going to be 100,000, and then somehow admit that you got it wrong. But when you're getting 14 different points of feedback and you're supposed to be getting 1, and you're on round 3 and you're supposed to have 2, it's okay to change order them.
Okay. We have a couple minutes left. Can a company dictate how much notice you have to give before departing? If so, what is the most time?
For an employee, no. They can ask, but
What if I get an employee to sign a contract?
yeah. So all right, theoretically.
So what if when I'm hiring somebody and I give them an offer letter and say, here's the terms of the offer sheet.
You have to give us 2 weeks notice. Sorry.
Well, what if I bake that in there? What if I say you have to give us a month notice?
So
2 weeks is that's the bare minimum.
yeah, that's kind of like you can ask.
Anybody who doesn't give 2 weeks is an asshole.
Right. Yeah, you can be an asshole, but so my father's an employment lawyer and litigator who's been doing this for 35 years, and one of his favorite sayings in this sort of subject is, "We abolished slavery with the 14th Amendment." So you can't force someone to work for you. There are limited circumstances where, at a very high executive level, if somebody just up and leaves and the company suffers damages, then theoretically, or in actuality, that company could sue that person. But by and large, you can't force somebody to stay, even if your contract says so and they can up and leave. Theoretically, you might suffer some damage in those 2 weeks that they didn't give you notice, but I have never seen anybody try and you can, they're a dick, but
Yeah, I think this is a reputation issue,
Yeah.
not a contractual issue. Like, back in the day, you did not leave a project in the middle of it. It was a dick move. If you were on a client project, you made sure you finished it. Even if you wanted to leave, you made sure you finished it. You might tell your boss, like, hey, when this project is over, I'm out, so don't put me on anything new. But you just didn't walk up and leave in the middle of something, because you would never get another job again.
right. Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, I think we're out of time, actually.
Jesse, are we out of time?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Chuck.
You're welcome.